U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions testified before the Senate's Intelligence Committee today. Sessions refused to answer many questions about his conversations with President Trump, citing potential executive privilege. But that's a protection that only the president can invoke, and Trump hasn't, yet. That was actually the crux of Sessions' circuitous argument.
Well,
you said you don't have the power to assert the power of executive privilege, so what is the legal basis for your refusal to answer these questions?
I am protecting the right of the president to exert it. I'll assert it if he chooses.
I don't understand how you can have it both ways.
I think most cabinet officials before the committee, at some point, the president will either assert the privilege or not, but at this point, I believe it's premature.
Sessions' testimony was frustratingly boring, but he was not there to drop bombshells. He was there to protect the president. Evan McMorris Santoro watched the hearing with Douglas Gansler, the former Democratic Attorney General of Maryland.
So you have faith in the investigation then?
I couldn't have more faith in the investigation.
You really do?
Yeah. I think it's, I think Donald Trump has made obviously a lot of mistakes, and he's got a lot of issues, mental issues, and other things. But firing James Comey was probably the biggest mistake that he ever did, because the day he did that, he waded into potential impeachment territory.
These false attacks, the innuendos, the leaks, you can be sure will not intimidate me. In fact, these events have only strengthened my resolve to fulfill my duty.
Are your flags going up in your prosecutorial brain?
Right now what he's doing is what President Trump does, which is deflect from the conversation. He's talking about, as if what he's been doing is to run the department and address things like the opioid crisis, when they're here to investigate the Russian meddling in our elections.
This is not the day if you're an impeachment fan.
No, because he's tied up in it. I mean, by definition, he's tied up in it. He recused himself.
I was never briefed on any investigative details, did not access any information about the investigation. I received only the limited information that the department's career officials determined was necessary for me to form and make a recusal decision. As such, I have no knowledge about this investigation.
Recusing himself, and the DOJ still has to go about doing its job of doing it. Can that all work?
Totally.
It can.
There's no problem with him recusing himself as long as he actually recuses himself and stays recused. What he did instead was recuse himself and then help fire Director Comey.
So it's really more about what the prosecutors who are doing the prosecution are going to do versus what the politicians who are on these at these moments are saying.
Right. There's an enormous amount of concurrent investigations going on. None of them are that relevant. Well, the only thing that could happen in these is that one of these guys could be lying under oath. I mean, this goes back to the cover-up's worse than the crime. So whether or not he met with the Russian ambassador, he could have met with the Russian ambassador and talked about, favorite kinds of vodka. But the question is, what did he talk about with him?
If any brief interaction occurred in passing with the Russian ambassador during that reception, I do not remember it.
Do you protect yourself from perjury by saying, I don't remember? Does that count? It does? Yeah. What do you think Americans should make of this hearing?
So Attorney General Sessions asked to have this hearing because in the wake of Director Comey's hearing, he wanted to clarify some things. I'm not sure he really did a successful job of that. He had answers for some of the questions, but he evaded most of the questions. I don't think there was anything sort of monumental that came out of today's hearing. I think that General Sessions does look like he's a little squirmy and not really being direct or forthright, but there's nothing that he seems to have lied about. I just think it's another piece of the puzzle.